We move now to item 18 on the agenda. It's to consider a motion in respect of fracking on council land. Now, this is quite important, members. This is the first motion to be considered under our new procedural rules. And this is really important for your benefit and for those viewing from the gallery or the webcast. I can confirm that the proposer and the seconder of the motion both have 10 minutes to address the meeting. Any member wishing to speak to this motion can do so for up to 5 minutes. At the end of the debate, the proposer will have up to 10 minutes for the reply. And this is also new, and I'd like to draw your attention to this. There is a new right of reply for the proposers of amendments, and that is again something very different. This motion is proposed by Councillor Beck and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Councillor Beck, please rise to propose the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have half an hour lined up, actually, but I will try and condense it. As I said, thank you, Madam Mayor. I am pleased to be able to move this motion this afternoon, not only because of my own personal opposition to what is actually hydraulic fracturing, we know it as fracking, and the processes involved, but moreover than that, and my own personal views, I represent the Wales ward in the southwest of the borough, where we have received the first planning application in Rotherham from 18oct Shale for consideration by the planning board next month, I think, to construct what would be the first exploratory drill rig site in Harthill, which is the precursor to fracking. So I do understand the very real and genuine concerns that people have. There are many myths and half-truths and misrepresentations made around fracking frequently. Its processes and potential risks involved. So I'll outline a few facts today. In December last year, the US Environmental Protection Agency identified cases of potentially negative impacts on drinking water at each stage in the hydraulic fracturing cycle. And closer to home, Lord Chris Smith, the former chair of the Environment Agency, said in 2013 that groundwater contamination is the biggest environmental risk from fracking. In 2011, an earthquake of 2.3 on the Richter scale occurred on the 1st of April. Yes, it was April Fool's Day, but it happened close to Blackpool, followed by another earthquake a month or so later in May. Both occurred close to the Priest Hole drilling site, and a report subsequently attributed the earthquakes to the drilling processes used at this site. Shale gas was formed millions of years ago from decomposing plants trapped by clay and silt. Shale gas is a fossil fuel, and there are numerous scientific studies, including from Public Health England, which have outlined the potential risk to public health as a result of the fracking process. Now, I firmly believe and have confidence in the generally robust and effective regulatory bodies that we have in our country. However, no matter how manageable the risks might be, or even just the potential for risk itself, is a risk too many. And by the very admission of companies involved with fracking, it's all about the mitigation of risk to the external environment rather than the eradication of risk. And jobs. We are a council that has, we would dare say, a successful track record at encouraging inward investment, supporting business growth and the creation of jobs. But there is no consolation here, I'm afraid, colleagues. Fracking elsewhere just hasn't been proven to create vast amounts of jobs to benefit local job markets, like, for instance, coal mining once did here in Rotherham. And surely we shouldn't still be supporting industries which proliferates the extraction and use of fossil fuels. Instead, we should be encouraging the growth and investment in renewable energy sources. The concerns and well-being of local communities and the residents who live in them should, without compromise, always be a sacrosanct priority for us. I conclude, regrettably, that the government is supporting an industry, an industrial process and an approach which I believe falls short of this. Finally, I am sad that in 2012 the then Liberal Democrat Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, Ed Davey, lifted the national ban back then on fracking, and the 2017 UKIP election manifesto stated that UKIP will invest in shale gas exploration, following on from 2015 election manifesto, which declared it's time to get fracking. However, colleagues, I am proud that in 2017, the Labour Party manifesto, there was a commitment to ban fracking. Testament not only to support energy sources over renewable energy sources over that of shale gas exploration and the extraction of this, but moreover, I feel, it's a testament to our commitment to support communities potentially affected by such activity and ensure their voices are heard. So, Madam Mayor, I therefore formally move that this Council A. regrets the decision of the then Liberal Democrat Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, Ed Davey, to lift the national ban on fracking in 2012, and B. commits to not allow fracking activities, including survey work, on Council-owned or controlled land and property. And I would like to reserve my right to sum up at the end, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Of course. Councillor Wilson, please rise to second the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillor Beck. Fracking is one of the most controversial issues the United Kingdom's political and legal system has seen in recent years. It's an issue which has pushed communities such as Kirkby and Misperton in North Yorkshire to breaking point and challenged the capacities of our police. As a councillor for Anston and Woodsets, I know how residents are feeling right now, worried that fracking in our local community could have an adverse effect on the place we call home. When people think of the Rother Valley, they immediately recall the wealth of pristine countryside synonymous with the area, and Woodsets, like Wales, certainly doesn't provide an exception to this. For those of you who know Woodsets, you know that the village's rural atmosphere is part of what makes it such a desirable and special place to live. Residents are extremely concerned that this will be lost, but that isn't all that they're concerned about. On an international level, evidence suggests that fracking carries a wide array of substantial environmental and health and safety risks. Subsidence, earthquakes, contamination, pollution, and concerns over bad practice are at the forefront of arguments against fracking. In the context of our locality, however, residents also worry about the risk of potentially depreciating house prices, safeguarding the public from harm, the effect the operation could have on roads, on water, and the usability of the land afterwards. And as alluded to by Councillor Beck, unlike coal mining, fracking will not create an abundance of local jobs, nor will it prove to be a great asset to the local economy whatsoever, but rather leave us with the remnants of a once vibrant and cherished landscape that no longer exists. I'm against fracking, and I hope that with this motion, Rotherham Council can send a clear message to concerned residents across the borough that we are standing shoulder to shoulder with them, and that we are on the same page. Fracking is already banned in Scotland over safety concerns, and the Labour Party are unreservedly against fracking on a national level. And after attending meetings where fracking companies could not adequately answer my questions or address residents' concerns, I'm even more elated to be seconding this motion today in solidarity with the people I was elected to represent, and to continue fighting against something I so fervently oppose. I wholeheartedly second this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, we have received notice of an amendment to be proposed by Councillor Carter and seconded by Councillor Jepson. The details of this amendment are being found at Appendix A of the Mayor's letter. Councillor Carter, please rise to propose your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I challenged council leaders at last month's council meeting, I was hoping that we'd be able to have an adult debate on this issue, as it matters to many of Rotherham's residents. So you can imagine my great joy when I read the agenda for this meeting and saw fracking was to be debated in this motion. I'm pleased that the Labour group is now relying on opposition councillors to set the agenda in this council chamber It does, however, show a lack of leadership at the very top. On reading the motion put forward, I was sorely disappointed. Rather than put forward a substantial motion that this chamber could debate properly and make a statement on fracking for the people we are elected to serve, the Labour Party decided to resort to the lowest level of petty party political point scoring, which does not help the residents of Rotherham that we are elected to serve in any way. If I were to sink to that level, I could mention Yvette Cooper and GMB's stance on fracking, but then it does a disservice to Rotherham's public to do so. So, I move on to debate fracking. As Liberal Democrats, we are committed to banning fracking, a point the Labour Party chose to omit from their original motion, as we believe money investment should be focused on developing renewable energy technologies. During the 5 years the Lib Dems were in government, we saw a massive investment through our Green Investment Bank, which was set up to make it easier for the country to move away from a reliance on fossil fuels and to properly invest in renewable technologies. This saw a massive investment in renewable energy, and this continues to this day. Fracking is an unproven technology that could do untold damage to our local environment and our local communities. At a time where other European countries are able to rely on renewable energy, starting to permit fracking in the UK is a backward step. We should be focusing our efforts on increasing renewable energy in the country. In addition, the opportunities that renewable energy provides for business to innovate is a real opportunity to create jobs, particularly locally. In my view, the government should be investing in green energy and incentivising businesses to develop the green technology that could create jobs for local people. And I propose the amendment to the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Jepson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd ask to propose, or to second the motion. Could I add a few comments a bit later on once the debate gets underway? Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we now move to a debate on the amendment. And please indicate if you wish to speak, and I'll take you in order that I see you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We sit in this council chamber as elected members, and probably with the exception of Councillor Jepson, we were all brought here as members of a political party. So the idea that we should sit in here and have debates that don't reflect our political views is, quite frankly, laughable. Councillor Carter talks about the fact that he finds it disappointing that we bring politics into this. He talks about the fact that the Liberal Democrats are, as we sit here now, against fracking. I've been alive 60 years. No, sorry, I was waiting for you to say surely not. I've been disappointing. I've been alive 60 years. In that time, the Liberal Democrats have actually been in the government in 5 of those years. 55 of those years, they were against anything that wasn't renewable. As soon as they got into power, Ed Davey, frack where you want, lads. So the idea that now they're out of power again, they can go back to saying, no, we're against it now, like I said earlier, laughable. I would have thought, if any of the members of the major opposition group wanted the bit about UKIP's comment in the manifesto taken out, they'd have proposed that. They didn't, so I'm assuming that they were happy with it. And then your last thing that you wanted to take out, which you wanted to add, was asking us to write, to pledge to the government, get the government to write to the government and the local MPs. We don't need to write to the local MPs, because as it says in bullet point number 4, the Labour Party, and we are fortunate enough to have 3 Labour MPs in our area, are against fracking. We don't need to write to them to ask them to be against it. They're against it. It's in the manifesto. I move that we defeat this amendment because it serves no purpose other than to hide the pitiful, yes I am using that word, pitiful view of the Liberal Democrats in allowing this when they were in government.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Roche, please.
I rise to speak against this amendment as well. I believe local people should make local planning decisions. That's democracy. it's a matter of facts that the coalition lifted the ban on fracking, and the current Secretary of State has the power to override any local planning decision on fracking. That is not democracy, and that whole process was started by the coalition government. So, the amendment tries to, for political reasons, change history, to rewrite what's actually happened during the coalition time in power. We shouldn't be allowing that. Councillor Carter, you made a comment, or made several comments, about making political statements in this chamber. At the last full council meeting, you asked me a very politically biased question about care homes, and I answered you in that vein. If you'd asked me a straightforward question, I'd have answered you straightforwardly. And that is not the first time that you've asked me a political motivated question, and you will always get a politically motivated answer back. So I think it's a bit of a fallacy for you to argue that we shouldn't be talking politics in this chamber when you phrase your questions quite often in a political manner. I strongly oppose the amendment.
Any more speakers on the amendment? Councillor Jepson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will speak on this as somebody who doesn't make politically motivated statements. I'd just ask if the leader would cast his mind back to the council meeting on the 25th of January of this year, when I asked him about fracking, and particularly in the southern area of Rotherham, and asked him. I could read some of it out if you give me a licence to do so. Councillor Jepson asked, given that the Labour Party's official policy was a total ban on fracking, would the leader confirm that fracking in the Rotherham Borough was banned? Councillor Reid, the leader, explained that Labour Party policy was not law, but explained that should Rotherham receive an application for fracking, it would have to be considered in the light of national policy. In a supplementary question, Councillor Jepson was unsure if the leader was aware that in the southern part of the borough, and this is Anston and Woodsets that I also represent, and Wales Ward where Harthill is, many town and parish councils have been bombarded by one particular company, which is INEOS that have been referred to. There will be applications in the pipeline over the next few years, but asked if and when there was a change in government, if applications had been granted in Rotherham, how would this be squared if there was a ban on fracking? Councillor Reid explained that this would depend on the legislation, but it was anticipated the burden would fall on those companies to end these practices. Any application submitted now would have to be judged on its merits, which is entirely correct, as Councillor Atkins sort of stepped out of the debate. It will be decided by planners and the planning board. If I can just go back to the motion, again, I'm totally against fracking. I've been attended all the meetings at INEOS and other groups of it organising Woodsets, and I'm totally opposed to it. I don't see any good that can come from it. I agree with this statement. It's not going to create jobs. All the jobs, from what they said, will be specialised, and people will be brought in from abroad to fill these positions if there aren't enough trained people in this country. If I just go up to bullet point 3, it says local residents have expressed concern. I think that's really an understatement. Perhaps it could have been made a bit stronger. Nobody that I know in Woodsets is in favour of this. And can I just say, I support that, the part about doing the fracking on council land, but all the parish councils in the area that I know have all banned it already on their land. So actually the parish council have set a precedent before the borough council. But they're not going to want to frack on borough-owned land. It's going to be in private-owned land out in the rural areas where they can get at it more easily. So we have a bit of a conundrum that we can ban it on council land, but it won't go away because they will find other way around it. And at Woodsets in particular, they've gone through a private landowner and they have agreed to allow them to do it on the land. So we've got the application which will be judged I think in November for Harthill. I understand the one for Woodsets is going to be submitted next week or the week after, so there will be 2 in the pipeline. The reason I backed Councillor Carter's amendment was, the Labour Party don't have a monopoly on opposition against fracking, and I, for one, don't support it. So it was purely on those grounds that we could get the same decision or the same motion at the end of the day without the need to have a go at different political parties. So, as I say, I fully understand the motion. I will be supporting, obviously, the motion I've seconded. But again, I have to reiterate, I am totally against fracking, and I do not see any good coming of it at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more speeches? Sorry, Councillor.
Just add one more statement, if I could. We've now got this statement on fracking, but I would just say over the last 5 years I've consistently oppose development on Greenbelt, and I'd just like to know where the rest of the councillors in this chamber were over the last 5 years, because as far as I'm aware, nobody has opposed or supported their communities when they've tried to oppose development on Greenbelt. And during the inspectors' hearings, I was the only borough councillor that were involved in them. So I'm disappointed that now we've got to the fracking, everybody seems to be coming out of the woodwork and opposing it. Where were the early days on Greenbelt development?
Thank you, Councillor Jepson. Councillor Napper, shall I remind people we're speaking on debate on the amendment about fracking, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As most of the members of UKIP know, we don't have to follow a party line. We are individuals and we vote with our own conscience and with our residents' backing. I'm against fracking. And may I point out to the planning department some of the things they have got to look at considerations when looking at planning. The water use, waste management, groundwater contamination, surface contamination, aerial emissions, seismic activity, traffic, noise, landscape and visual effects, and the ecology and climate change. Just to point out that one hole, it can cover 10 square kilometres. So we're not if there's one in Harthill, it could affect Todrick and different places all round. So anybody who lives within so many kilometres of a hole, it can affect you. I have fetched it up, and I have fetched up about Greenbelt. I fetched it up before about different places we were going to build on. So I'm against building on Greenbelt. With regards to fracking as well, what concerns me is, because I'm a mining engineer, I worked at
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Councillor Napper, but are you speaking on the amendment or the substantive motion? Because we're still on the amendment in particular.
Yeah, and well, I'm totally against fracking, and said one of the reasons. Coming back from a mining background, we came across lots of faults on the ground. When you hit a fault, and these lateral drill holes will hit faults. When you get to a fault, you always watch for gases coming out, water, stuff like that. They can come all the way to the surface. So that can contaminate water courses, etc. So on that, I'm against.
Thank you very much, Councillor Napper. Do we have any more speakers? But remind you, it's on the amendment. No. Then Councillor Carter, as proposer of the amendment, under the new rules, you now have a right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we've had a nice debate on the amendment here, and we've all had a forthright exchange of views. I hear your concerns about fracking. I think we should support a motion that actually goes a bit further and actually pledges to lobby government, and we should take a motion forward that can get consensus within this chamber. I hope you support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Members, having had an amendment proposed and seconded, we now move on to a vote on the amendment as set out in Appendix 8 on the Mayor's letter. Can all members vote by clearly raising their hands? All those in favour? All those against? Do we have any abstentions?
I abstain because I'm very interested.
Thank you, Councillor. That amendment is lost. And we now return, to be clear, to the substantive motion. And I'm taking speakers on the substantive motion. And on the order that I see hands raised. Councillor Steele.
Madam Mayor, first of all, can I say I'm glad the amendment lost, because every decision where a politician makes is a political decision. That's a lot of reasons why people join political parties and are mandated by the rules of that political party. And can I say, in supporting Councillor Beck, in supporting this motion, I'll also go on demonstrations against fracking like I have done already, because at the end of the day I just don't going to just oppose it in words, I'll oppose it in actions, because if you don't agree with something, you stand up and fight against it, and that's one of the reasons why I will support this motion and stand up with the general public against fracking, because I am opposed to it and I spoke on public platforms in Rotherham against it. Quite clearly, my main concern in this area, where the fracking licences are being given, they've been given by a Tory administration in government who told them where the fracking's going to go, and they're not in their constituencies. I can tell you that if you look at the map. You know what really worries me about starting fracking in this area? Not just the pollutions, but there's a lot of mine works down there, and we don't know what damage it will do when they start fracking in these areas. So that's why we should be opposed to them, to protect our thing. And one thing is, renewable energy is the best energy to have. I'm totally in support of the motion not amended.
Thank you. Councillor Cowles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, like Councillor Carter, I'm really disappointed that we haven't had a full and proper debate on this subject, and I was really disappointed by Councillor Beck. I thought he would actually present much more strong arguments in favour of the points he wanted to make. So I won't be supporting the motion for the following reasons. Energy policy, for that is what we're really discussing, must meet three fundamental criteria. It must be reliable, it must be secure, and it must be at a price that people can afford. At a hustings at the last election, there was a question from the audience on energy policy, and I put forward the above criteria. And John Healy, representing Labour, supported my view and agreed that these were indeed fundamental criteria that needed to be addressed. Nothing I have heard today convinces me that you have thought through these fundamental criteria or that you can sustain energy supply meeting these criteria over the long term. Yes, we have had a morning when energy requirements of the country were met using no fossil fuel, but this was a one-off short period during the summer when the wind was blowing in the right direction and high tide occurred at the right time of day. I've not heard anyone make the claim that meeting energy needs of the country is sustainable in this way, 7 by 24 by 365. A vibrant and expanding economy is dependent on a reliable and cost-effective energy policy, and herein lies the issues of concern. In Europe, many countries use electricity for both domestic and industrial purposes and have developed their electricity supplies accordingly. Here in the UK, this is not the case. We use electricity extensively in industry and for domestic lighting, but the bulk of domestic heating needs are met by gas. However, when you look at renewable fuel subsidies, the tariffs are charged against electricity. Take a look at your bills, you can clearly see this. Hence our industry is at a disadvantage as subsidies are not shared equally and distributed across both fuels. And this is why you hear industries like steel complain about the high cost of energy. Given that industry is energy intensive and you are suggesting that we now dispense with gas, where would all the electricity needed come from? How long would it take to convert all the domestic households to electricity to allow us to dispense with gas? Unsurprisingly, you've not tackled this issue. How many additional power stations would be required? Where would they be? How long would they take to build? Solar is a renewable, and believe me, I am a fan. In fact, we could put solar panels across 300 square miles of the Sahara Desert, and I'm told it would meet the energy needs of the world. The problem is we cannot transport it from where it's produced to where it's needed. Solar panels are becoming a way forward, and they are coupled to battery systems used to store the surplus energy produced during the day so that it can be used at night, generally referred to as lithium-ion technology. But where does the lithium come from to make lithium carbonate that's used in batteries? Lithium is not a common element, The major deposits are located in Australia and South America, not exactly close by. What reserves are available, I do not know, but I'm not convinced that you know either. Is there an alternative? Well, perhaps graphene batteries could be a solution. Again, I don't know anything about this capability, and will domestic solar systems have the capability to power lighting, cooking and heating on a 7x24 by 365 capability? Other forms of renewable pose similar problems, so it would be wise to ensure we don't have some form of backup capability. This can only be really provided by gas. It is the only source with the flexibility required that can be switched on and off quickly, and generating capability can be built quickly if necessary. Finally, on security, allow me to read you an extract from the media this weekend. But one of the largest attacks which had the potential to disrupt the global flow of oil and gas was down to Iran. Tehran was behind a persistent malware onslaught in which 30,000 computer terminals were erased and affected in 2012. While Iran ranks below Russia and China in terms of ability to harm Western interests and critical infrastructure, experts have sounded alarms about increased sophistication and the stepping up of its attacks on aerospace and petrochemicals. Only yesterday, the government finally woke up to this issue of strategic industries and the need to ensure industries involved in the production and supply of energy remain under our control. They recognise the threat from state-sponsored espionage and terrorist attack to our energy supply. So my question is, if we're not producing our own gas throughout a transition period of unknown duration away from fossil fuels, just where will the gas come from? And just how secure will the supply be? Are you suggesting we put Putin or some other nutter in control of the gas tap? You've said nothing on this subject. Let's turn to cost. I'm not unique, but my electricity charges are roughly equal to my gas charges, though I only use electricity for lighting and white goods, not for heating. Therefore, due to subsidies, electricity is expensive by comparison to use, and we should look to remove these renewable subsidies if we're not to increase energy bills for those who can least afford it. Or
Councillor,
Or will they have solar and will it meet their needs? However, I have not heard you propose this. I note that rather than decrease the demand for gas, as one might expect, if you are to reduce the effect of unreliable, insecure energy source, you are proposing increasing demand with your house building programme. They're a brand new estate at Wickets Upper Off, and I've checked.
Thank you, Councillor.
Every house has a gas-fired central heating system. Every house has a gas-fired central heating system.
Thank you. Councillor Roche.
Make a point. I know for people of myself and Mr. Cowles, Councillor Cowles' vintage, certain terms were used to be part of our language, but I really think referring to people as a nutter isn't really acceptable in this day and age.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Could we please, especially bearing in mind what I talked about at the beginning about World Mental Health Week, I don't appreciate that kind of language, I agree. Councillor Roche?
I rise to support the motion. I do believe in developing our own UK energy sources for all sorts of reasons, some, dare I say, which Councillor Cowles has just mentioned. But I don't believe this is the answer. I do believe in renewable energy. I think my commitment to the green issues I've shown in other ways. But there's a number of other reasons why I'm supporting this motion. I have a really cynical disregard for big business. And when they tell me something is safe, I don't know if I can believe them. We saw what happened with Volkswagen and their diesel cars. If you want more examples of how big corporations don't always tell us the truth in terms of health and safety, then read a well-known book called Corporation USA, which really goes to the heart of the question about can we really trust big business when it tells us something is safe, that fracking is safe, and that's one of my key concerns in this. For me, there are too many unknowns with fracking, too many things which are unsure about, too many potential risks for health and safety. Therefore, I'm not personally prepared to take the risk of that potential harm to people's lives through groundwater, through earthquakes. It may be they're all groundless, but we don't know for sure. And I don't think we should be taking those risks with people's lives and people's health at this stage, which is one of the reasons why I'm totally in support of this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A lot has been said about the risks and the concerns with regard to fracking. But I've always been reminded that your criticism is only as good as your alternative. And in this case, there is an alternative. The alternative is renewable energy of solar, wind and hydro in particular. And I think it was incredibly pleasing and encouraging that in June this year, the National Grid reported that 50.7% of the energy in the UK was generated by those methods. This is the first time ever, and it shows that it can be done, because some people thought it couldn't and would never happen. 10% of the UK power coming from offshore wind farms. And I think we all know that in Hull there's a massive programme to further that. The costs on wind farms are plummeting much far faster than anybody expected. And again, that's an encouragement that if we invest in solar, wind, hydro, we will see the return. I believe our efforts should therefore be put into renewables, and the development, as Councillor Carroll said, the development of storage of electricity is essential for this, but not impossible. So it's because of that I believe that development should go for the renewables, and I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to pick up on the green belt, the protection and the listening to concerns of the people where these proposed wells are going to be. And I'd just like to remind our Labour colleagues that when the proposed plans to build thousands of houses on Greenbelt went through, and people raised concerns, ignored. And it was they who voted to allow the great white elephant that is HS2 to bulldoze its way through our countryside and housing estates, ignoring local protests and concerns. Finally, speaking as a Greensboro resident, if someone came to me and said, "We have found a reserve of gas under the fields of Bassingthorpe, so now there's a choice for you. 2 or 3 wellheads, which are approximately the size of football pitches and can be farmed around, or 4,000 houses, which will totally obliterate the landscape. If I had a choice, the choice would not be the houses." I cannot support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Cooksey.
Yeah, I'd like to address a broader issue, which is climate change. The government are very supportive of the shale gas industry, including the American petrochemical giant INEOS, when what we should be doing is reducing our dependency on fossil fuels to meet emission-reducing targets. The only way to stop climate change is to stop burning fossil fuels, not to dig up more. And the former Special Envoy on Climate Change, John Ashton, said, "You can be in favour of fracking and you can be in favour of tackling climate change, but you can't be in favour of both." And I think if we make a political decision in Britain to invest in a green economy, we could deliver skilled jobs and lower bills, which incidentally haven't been, in America there hasn't been any incidence of lower fuel bills because of fracking, and we could tackle the threat of climate change. We must put planet before profit, and for that reason I'm supporting the motion.
Thank you. Any more? Sorry, Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In this motion, I think there's a lot of good things in terms of our commitment to be anti-fracking, particularly on council land, and I think we should go forward and support that aspect of the motion. And in that spirit of the main intent of the motion, ignoring the political squabbles within the motion, I will be voting in favour of the motion, but by voting in favour, I will not be voting for the Part A of the proposals at the bottom of that. So thank you.
Settle down. We're all aware it's got a lot more business to get through. Any more speakers on the substantive motion? No? Councillor Beck, you have the right to reply. Would you like to do so?
Yes, please. Don't we all love politics? I won't address all the issues raised, because I think as the debate's gone on, we've had an exchange of views, and that's very clear. I would like to say, though, that for me, and I would dare say my colleagues and all those in support of this motion who have spoken, this isn't about Greenbelt. And it's wrong to raise that as the issue as part of what the motion and the sentiment behind it is intended to do. This is about the principle of fracking and whether we as a council allow such activities on our land or council-controlled land. We can have a debate about Greenbelt and housing, and we do very frequently, but this isn't about Greenbelt. So I would like to say that. But on a more positive note, I am pleased that generally, Madam Mayor, I feel there's a consensus around this motion. I know people have said some members aren't able to support this today, but I do get a feeling there's a general consensus around this, so that's very pleasing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beck. Members, this motion has been proposed and it has been seconded, and I'm now proceeding to the vote. Can all members, by clearly raising their hands, all those in favour? All those against? Do we have any abstentions?